If I were to ask you what came to mind when you thought about Native American culture, what would be the first image that popped in your mind? It would probably be a teepee, being immortalized by TV and old westerns. It's known as the quintessential home of all Native Americans. In the book Black Elk Speaks, Black Elk made a reference to his home, the teepee. He said, "There's no power in a square house. There's power in a round house. The moon is round, the sun is round, and life is in a circle, and that's why we live in one." As a kid, I was fascinated by Native American culture, being part Cherokee. So naturally I would root for the Indians in all those old Western movies. Now during the summer months I was a park ranger, but it was downstate. So we needed a place to live, and I saw this as a perfect opportunity to make one of these and live in it. Now to set up a teepee, you start off with a 3-pole frame. The other poles are laid in around, and then the final pole, being the lodge pole, is put in the back, raised, and then the cover is pulled around both sides, and then the front is laced up with pins. Now, not all teepees are the same. There's a 4-pole people, the mountain people who lived along the Rocky Mountains. You could tell what tribe they were by the style of how they set up their teepee. Those 4-pole people had a bigger smoke hole, and they weren't as sturdy in the high winds like on the lower plains. That's how the 3-pole frame got adopted, because it has a tighter grouping up in the top, and for some reason it could withstand the wind better. I remember during the night in thunderstorms, seated inside, and the storm raging on all around us, and we're sitting in there with a fire, and the next morning going outside, seeing all the square tents blown over, and we didn't pull up one peg. Now I paid my rent by telling Indian stories to the kids on the weekend, and their parents would show up. And the parents would ask all sorts of questions, and I would tell them all the traditional stories about the teepee and some of its history. And like the front, the door always faced east to greet the sun. The front of the teepee was always used as a kitchen, and the back of the teepee was the living area. And while I'd talk to them, I'd watch them, and you could see it in their eyes as they watched the smoke rise up through the top, and looked out at the stars, and looked at their shadows dancing around on the side of the painted walls, seated on traditional backrests. And I think they felt the power of a circle too, just like Black Elk said. Today, the teepee is alive and well. It's at most summer camps on the reservations, and there is also a following of people who like to camp in them. Of course, they have their own methods. They'll put stoves in them instead of fires. They'll put refrigerators, and they put beds and couches. There's a wealth of heritage and lore behind the teepee, and you can't help, when inside one, to sit and in those quiet moments think about what it must have been like to live this way.